Famous poems about color. I found a list of 10, and don't particularly connect with any of them. What Neruda saw in wheat, I never saw. Having walked through the stalk grass with its sticky fingers, pawing at my shorts, like greedy children. Wheat was never the color of a lover to me. Know that I am gentle, but this may change as we collide. Our prerogatives combine, our orbits decompose, and a pulmonary swell of reciprocal gravity wells combust. Time, temperature, saturation. Autumn models the arms of arbors. Fresh waters froth in estuaries cradle, where deeper currents of salience do surely meet. Vitruvius' squared circle of wondrous proportion strides off the scrollwork in convoluted undulations and falls to dust. Time bends the arm of the river. And Dickinson talks of yellow and the rarity of a sunset, in its bruised hues, but sour-tongued and hurtful to the eye is my recollection. Or the black tempests that swirl upon the sun's circular disk, when I gaze at it overlong. Can we know who we are, where we come from, or where we are going, within any definable parameter? And would this knowing render the miraculous into a genetically designated automaton, rather than an observer of time's languid waters? Of thunderstruck skies we gather beneath, in puddles of laughter, daring the fall of titanic forces, of shoulder-borne biers solemnly laid to rest, of gutting martial fires, and of colors. And blue is so often sad or tranquil in verse, much ado and much rehearsed. And we know that sea squalls and tempests are often darker shades of grays, like the shelf of locks on the brows of the old and worn. But blue to me is cool, like when I'm quiet, between a red rage of poems that rise in the reaching arms of gin, and depart in the murmurs of their smoking entrails. And Blake saw the poet as a font of ever-replenishing dispensations, a diviner of infinite imagination. And it is an observable phenomenon. The more one drinks of simple light. Within the spectrum, the more one thirsts for a deep dive across the eye, across the infrared and its radiant coals. All the more its burgeoning dams, the ultraviolet waters burst. Know that I am what I was made, an assemblage of constituent elements, acting by will, acting by necessity, which was written into my bowels. A son becomes a steward whose responsibility is handed down by catalyst or by increment. A worker becomes a worn vessel, vertebrae stretched to their limitations. A pupil to many a departed sage, whose lingering voice is the most constant companion, becomes a teacher to those of his age. And purples and yellows and browns and blacks were my layered timeline of bruises. Weeks shaded beneath days, standing over the shoulder of hours. The crowded whole, speaking words of venom when glanced across. And when I am alone, I am called sentinel. And when tested, immovable tenacity. So I think if I'm going to talk of colors, they should be the ones I've felt, in my white bones, in their red and yellow rivers of memory. And know that my intentions are true as the course of Cygnus, whose fine feathered symmetries wade through the black boil, balancing the scales of compassion and cognition. And we hold to our communal soil, to the slow waltz of axial rotation. Blackbirds clear the evening's detritus, white birds laugh at the limbed shore. and I am true as the eye of the dog star, burning in a blue-white kaleidoscope, changeable only in reactionary temperate disposition, and only for a time. And this will never change. Of Colors by Daniel Christensen.